My name is Marissa Lane. I'm 29 years old. For the past 4 years, I thought I was building a life with Daryl, my 27-year-old boyfriend. We'd been living together for the last 2 years in my apartment, my safe place, my little corner of stability. At least that's what I believed until the night everything unraveled. It started on a Tuesday evening, the kind of night where the laundry hums in the background and everything feels ordinary. I was folding Daryl's shirts, smoothing out the creases like I'd done 100 times before. But instead of sitting across from me on the couch, chatting about his day, Daryl was glued to his phone. His thumbs moved fast, his jaw tight, eyes darting with a nervous energy he thought I wouldn't notice. For weeks, he'd been different running errands that took hours, brushing off my casual questions, retreating into his screen as though I didn't exist. At first, I thought maybe he was stressed. Work had been unpredictable, but then I started catching small cracks in his stories. Last Thursday, he told me he'd gone to his brother's to help set up furniture. Later, his sister-in-law posted photos from the recital her kids had that very same night. Daryl wasn't in any of them. I saved that realization in the back of my mind like a seed waiting to grow roots. So that night, I asked as casually as I could, "Where were you yesterday afternoon?" I tried calling about dinner plans. He didn't look up, just mumbled out where I pressed. That's when it happened. He finally met my eyes, his face set in a cold, unrecognizable expression. And then he said the words that made my stomach twist. "I don't have to tell you everything I do." The tone, sharp, defensive, like I'd accused him of a crime. I froze, holding his jeans in my hands. "Daryl, you told me you were at your brother's, but Mia's photos." He cut me off with a shrug. "Plans changed. Why are you interrogating me? I'm allowed to have a life outside of you, Marissa. You're suffocating." The gaslighting burned hotter than any fight we'd ever had. My chest tightened. I wanted to shout to demand the truth, but before I could speak, his phone buzzed. Daryl snatched it up fast, but not fast enough. I saw the preview flash across the screen. "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow, beautiful, Danielle." In that instant, my world tilted. The defensive tone, the lies, the distance, it all connected. Danielle. Someone I'd never heard of until that second, already calling him beautiful, already planning their next meeting. "Daryl." My voice cracked barely more than a whisper. "Who's Danielle?" His expression shifted like storm clouds, defensive, guilty, then suddenly angry. "She's a friend from work." "Since when?" My voice was trembling, but I forced it steady. "You've never mentioned her." He rolled his eyes, scoffing like I was being ridiculous. "Since I don't have to tell you about every single person I meet." God, Marissa, this jealousy thing, it's really unattractive. But here's the thing. I wasn't jealous. Not anymore. I was done. Something inside me, something tired of excuses, of lies, of being made to feel like I was the problem, just snapped. "You're right," I said softly, almost too calmly. "You don't have to tell me anything." And then I did the one thing he never expected. I walked to the closet, pulled out my duffel bag, and started packing. Behind me, Daryl's tone flipped instantly. "Wait, what are you doing?" I didn't answer. Just folded clothes, slid them into the bag. "Marissa, stop being dramatic. You're seriously throwing a tantrum because I have friends." He followed me from room to room, confusion bleeding into panic. I kept moving bathroom next toiletries into a pouch. My hands were steady, but inside my heart pounded like thunder. "This is your apartment," he said, voice cracking. "You can't just leave." I zipped the bag shut and turned to him, my face unreadable. "Exactly. Which is why I can leave. And you know what? You're right, Daryl. You don't owe me explanations. And I don't owe you my presence." I slipped the ring of keys from my hand, kept my car key, but held out the apartment keys. "Here. It's all yours for now." His mouth fell open, eyes wide. He didn't reach for the keys right away like they might burn him. "You're serious?" His voice was thin, almost childlike. I nodded. "You wanted space. You've got it." The silence between us stretched heavy, suffocating. Then I walked past him, bag slung over my shoulder. "Marissa, wait, let's talk about this." He reached for my arm. I pulled away, and for the first time in years, I didn't look back. Out in the hallway, I could still hear him calling my name, but I kept walking, each step echoing with finality. Something in me knew this wasn't the end of the story. If anything, it was just the beginning. I didn't just leave my own apartment out of anger, I left out of strategy. If I'd stayed and tried to throw Daryl out, it would have been a screaming match. He'd cry about having nowhere to go, call his parents, maybe even guilt me into letting him stay. By leaving, I put the decision in his hands. The place was mine. If he wanted to keep living there, he'd have to figure out how to pay for it. And I needed space to breathe, to think, to remind myself that I wasn't crazy for wanting honesty. Day 2. After I walked out, my phone buzzed with a call from Denise, my landlord. She and I had always had a good relationship. She was practical, firm, but fair. "Marissa," she said, voice hesitant, "we've got a bit of a situation here." My stomach dropped. What kind of situation? "Well, Daryl came to the office this morning asking to be added to your lease. He said you two had a fight, and he needs to protect his housing rights." I nearly laughed. Housing rights? He's not even on the lease. He's been living with me as a guest. That's what I told him, Denise said. He also asked if he could take over the lease entirely. When I mentioned income verification and a credit check, he got very quiet. I bit my lip. Daryl worked part-time at a boutique gym. Even if he picked up extra shifts, he barely cleared $2,000 a month. Rent alone was $1,800, not even counting utilities. The math wasn't mathing. I thanked Denise, hung up, and sat on the edge of the bed at my friend Alyssa's place where I'd been crashing. My phone lit up again, this time Instagram notifications. Daryl had posted a long sob story caption under a moody black and white selfie. 4 years together, and she abandoned me because I dared to want independence. Toxic people don't know what love really means. The comments were nauseating. "Men can't handle strong women. She sounds controlling, babe. You deserve better." But the part that made my blood run cold, he tagged the location as my apartment, like he was planting a flag, claiming territory that wasn't his. Day 3. His best friend Chloe texted me from Daryl's phone since I'd already blocked him. "Marissa, he's devastated. He made one mistake and you're making him homeless after 4 years. That's cruel." One mistake? Right. I didn't respond. By day 4, I had to return to the apartment. I'd left behind some work equipment. I couldn't go long without my dual monitors, hard drives, things I needed for deadlines. My plan was simple. Get in, grab what was mine, get out. But when I opened the door, my heart slammed in my chest. There, sprawled on my couch, like he owned it, was Danielle, bare legs tucked under her, wearing my robe. A glass of wine in one hand, my PlayStation controller in the other. She jumped up when she saw me. "Marissa, Daryl appeared from the bedroom, hair messy, his t-shirt clearly not his own. He froze, then forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Marissa, we were just talking, right." Danielle's cheeks flushed crimson as she tied the robe tighter around her waist. Daryl tried again, his voice dripping with fake calm. "Look, this isn't what it looks like." In her underwear and my robe, my voice was ice. "Daryl, it looks exactly like what it is." Danielle had the audacity to clear her throat. "You don't need to be rude. I'm just helping him figure things out." I stared at her, in my apartment, on my couch, wearing my clothes. Her chin lifted in defiance. I brushed past both of them, heading straight for my office. Daryl followed me like a shadow voice rising. "You can't just come in here like you own the place." I stopped, turned slowly, and let the words sink in. "I do own the place. Your name isn't on anything. Not the lease, not the bills, nothing." He opened his mouth, but Danielle stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. "Daryl, don't. She's just trying to provoke you." I unplugged my monitors, slid them into a padded case. Every sound was sharp. The click of cables, the zip of the bag like punctuation marks in a sentence that had already been written. "You're taking the computer too," Daryl's voice cracked. "It's my computer," I said flatly, "unless you'd like to start paying for it, along with the rent." That shut him up. I slung the bag over my shoulder, paused at the doorway, and gave them both one last look. "You've got 26 days left to figure it out. After that, you're done here." Daryl's face hardened, but I caught the flicker of panic in his eyes. "Marissa," he said, tone suddenly sharper. "My dad's a lawyer. He says what you're doing is a legal eviction. You could get in serious trouble." I let out a short, humorless laugh, then have him call mine. I didn't have a lawyer yet, but something told me I'd be needing one soon. As I left, Danielle's voice followed me out the door, low and smug. "Don't worry, Daryl. She'll regret this." I didn't look back, but inside I knew they were right about one thing. This was far from over. Leaving wasn't surrender, it was strategy. I knew if I played this game head-on, Daryl would twist everything. He'd cry to his parents, charm his friends, play the victim on social media. No, I had to let him burn himself down. All I needed to do was watch, document, and wait. And sure enough, the fire started fast. Day 5. After I left, my phone buzzed with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Daryl's friends, his sister, even his mother. Each message laced with guilt. "Marissa, he's heartbroken. You can't just throw someone out like that after 4 years. Everyone makes mistakes. Don't ruin his life over one slip-up. Do you want to be the kind of woman who leaves someone homeless? Homeless. I nearly laughed. He wasn't paying rent. He'd never once covered utilities. At best, he bought groceries every other week. My place had always been my burden, my responsibility. But the campaign worked on his audience. By the end of the week, Instagram was buzzing with strangers calling me cold, toxic, controlling. And then came the first real blow. One evening, my coworker, Jake, pulled me aside after a long shift. His voice was low, hesitant. Hey, Marissa. I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, I saw Daryl downtown, at Romano's. He wasn't alone. My pulse spiked. Who was he with? Jake hesitated, then pulled up a blurry photo on his phone. Daryl sitting at a candlelit table, his hand locked with Danielle's across the linen, her head tilted toward him, eyes closed, lips brushing his knuckles. 3 weeks ago, long before I found that text. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Thanks for telling me, I whispered. He nodded, eyes full of pity. I didn't want to interfere, but when I saw your posts, I thought you should know. That night, lying awake at Alyssa's apartment, my chest felt like stone. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. All those nights, Daryl claimed he had work emergencies or family plans. He'd been whining and dining Danielle while I sat at home waiting for him to come back. The worst part, he thought I'd never leave. By week 2, Daryl escalated. He started filing fake maintenance requests with Denise. First, a broken dishwasher, then strange noises from the AC. Next, a leaking shower. Denise called me exasperated. Marissa, I've had 3 repair guys out there already. Nothing's broken. Your boyfriend, sorry ex, is making this up. He's trying to rattle me, I said, steadying my voice. Document everything, please. And Denise did. Photos, reports, timestamps. Every false claim went into a folder that would later become gold. But the lowest point, the one that made me feel stripped bare, came at work. It was lunchtime. My team and I were sitting at a cafe near the office, laughing about nothing important. Then the door slammed and the air changed. Daryl walked in. He'd never been to this cafe in his life. He scanned the room, spotted me, and stormed over like a man on a mission. Marissa, he said loudly, loud enough for my coworkers to hear. We need to talk. You're destroying my life. My heart pounded, but I forced my expression calm. This isn't the place, Daryl. You can't just throw me out after 4 years. Do you know how heartless you look? His voice cracked, and his eyes glistened as if he'd practiced the tears. My coworkers exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, Sandra, 60 years old, blunt as a hammer, folded her arms and said, Son, maybe this isn't the place for that conversation. Daryl's gaze whipped toward her, then back to me. His voice trembled. So that's it. You just sick your coworkers on me now. I breathed out slowly. Daryl, if you need something, contact my lawyer. His eyes widened. Your lawyer? You got a lawyer to evict me from my home. My apartment, I corrected. Not yours. And yes, from now on, everything goes through her. I handed him a business card with Victoria Hughes printed across the top. She was sharp, witty, and specialized in tenant law. A friend of Alyssa's had recommended her. When I'd told her the story, she'd laughed and said, He's not on the lease, he's never paid rent directly, and you gave him 30 days. Easiest case I'll have all month. Daryl took the card, staring at it like it was a death sentence. His lips moved, but no words came. Then he crumpled it in his fist, glared at me with watery eyes, and hissed, You'll regret this. He stormed out, leaving silence and unease in his wake. I sat back down, my co-worker's eyes on me. Sandra broke the silence with a dry chuckle. Stable guy, huh? I laughed weakly, but inside my chest was tight. Daryl was spiraling, and spirals don't end neatly. Something told me he hadn't even started yet. By week 3, the mask was gone. Daryl's desperation had turned into full-blown entitlement, and Danielle was right there with him feeding the flames. It started small charges on my credit card I didn't recognize. A food delivery here, a streaming subscription there. At first I thought I'd forgotten about them. But the list grew: online shopping, late-night ride shares, random app purchases. My stomach dropped when I realized what had happened. Daryl had saved my card details in his apps. He was still using them like nothing had changed. I froze, staring at my bank app. 4 years together, and I hadn't thought twice about letting him order takeout on my account. Now it was evidence. I disputed the charges, canceled the card, and changed every password: Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime. Within hours, Chloe, his best friend, texted me. Really, Marissa? You cut off his Netflix in the middle of a crisis? That's petty. I almost laughed. A crisis of his own making, and they were worried about Netflix. But then things got worse, much worse. Denise called again, her voice tight with anger. Marissa, I need you to come by. There's been damage. My heart sank. When I arrived, Daryl wasn't there, thank God. But what I saw made my blood boil. Holes in the walls where a giant TV bracket had been drilled in. Burn marks on the kitchen counter like someone had set a pot down still red hot. The bathroom door was hanging off its hinges. Red wine stains bled across the living room carpet like someone had deliberately spilled and left it. And Danielle's fingerprints were everywhere. Clothes in the bedroom, makeup scattered across my bathroom sink, shoes piled by the door. It wasn't just Daryl freeloading now she had moved in completely. Denise shook her head, snapping photos with her phone. This is coming out of your deposit unless you handle it. I clenched my jaw. Document everything. Bill me. I'll use it in court. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was furious. That night, I sat across from Victoria at her office as she flipped through the growing file. Each page photos, maintenance logs, screenshots stacked higher until the folder could barely close. Good, she said, lips curling into a smile. This is perfect. Unauthorized occupant. Property destruction. Fraud. He's digging his own grave. Her confidence calmed me, but only slightly. Because while Victoria was right legally, I was still the one walking into a war zone emotionally. And the war wasn't just with Daryl, it was with his family. The very next morning, my phone buzzed again. This time it was his father. A tax lawyer, not a housing one, but loud enough to try. The email stretched pages citing tenant rights, established residency, emotional distress. Threats of lawsuits if I didn't cease harassment immediately. Harassment. I'd left my own apartment given Daryl 30 days and told him to figure out his life, and somehow I was the abuser. I forwarded the email to Victoria. She laughed so hard I thought she'd cry. Tell his dad thank you for handing me a gift. We'll countersue for damages, fraud, and breach of quiet enjoyment. I stared at her, stunned. Countersue. She leaned back, eyes gleaming. Marissa, they want to play lawyer games. We'll bury them in evidence. By the time this is over, Daryl won't just be out of your apartment, he'll owe you for the privilege of destroying it. It should have made me feel triumphant. But as I walked home that evening, the weight settled in my chest. 4 years of my life with Daryl. 4 years of trust, of laughter, of believing we were building something. And now, he was a stranger in my home, leeching off me, gaslighting me in public, parading another woman in my space. The rage burned hot. But beneath it, quieter, more dangerous, was relief. Every unhinged stunt, every selfish move was proof. Proof that I had been right to walk away. I wasn't losing him. I was losing a parasite. Still, one thought haunted me. What would he do when the eviction papers came? Because I knew Daryl wasn't the type to go quietly. The eviction clock started ticking the moment Denise served Daryl with the official 3-day notice to quit. I half expected him to rage, to fight, to slam his fists against the walls. But instead, what I got was silence. And that silence was worse. It meant plotting. By day 2, the cracks started showing. I heard from Jake again, the same coworker who'd spotted Daryl weeks earlier with Danielle. Marissa, he said, lowering his voice, you won't believe this. I just saw Danielle helping her brother load her stuff into a car outside Romano's. Suitcases, makeup bags, boxes. Looked like she was moving out. My lips curved into a bitter smile. Danielle, the same woman who'd draped herself in my robe like a queen in her castle, was bailing when things got hard. Daryl was losing his anchor. And then came the implosion. On Instagram, Danielle posted a cryptic story. Sometimes you realize who's really there for you when life gets messy. Lesson learned. A few hours later, Daryl followed with a post of his own, a dimly lit photo of my living room captioned, "People will betray you and call it love." The irony nearly knocked me over. But social media drama was nothing compared to what came next court. Daryl's father, still clinging to the fantasies that his son had tenant rights, showed up beside Daryl at small claims. They looked ridiculous. Daryl in a wrinkled button-down, his dad clutching a briefcase like it was a shield. Victoria, meanwhile, sat next to me like she was born for this. Calm, sharp, deadly. The judge, an older man with little patience for theatrics, called the case. Daryl went first. His father spoke at length about how I'd abandoned Daryl, how my cohabitation created established tenancy, how Daryl had contributed financially through groceries and utilities. He even waved around receipts from Whole Foods like organic kale was proof of rent payments. Victoria nearly laughed out loud. When it was our turn, she didn't waste time. She slid a thick folder onto the judge's desk. Inside, lease agreement, my name only. Bank statements, every rent payment drawn from my account. Denise's maintenance logs documenting Daryl's fake reports. Photos of the damaged holes in walls, burn marks, stains. Screenshots of Danielle's belongings clearly moved in. And finally, the fraudulent charges on my credit card, itemized down to the penny. The judge flipped through the evidence, his brow rising higher with each page. When he looked back up, his voice was flat. "Mr. Lane." He glanced at Daryl's father. "Your son was a guest. Guests do not become tenants by eating groceries or sharing a bed. There is no legal standing here." Daryl shifted in his seat, face pale. His father opened his mouth, but the judge cut him off. "Further, I see documented damage and unauthorized occupancy. The defendant," he nodded toward me, "has grounds for compensation. My ruling, Daryl owes $3,400 for damages, $800 for fraudulent charges, and $1,200 for legal fees. Total $504. Daryl's jaw dropped. "What? That's insane." The judge slammed his gavel. "Court is adjourned." Daryl's protest died in the echo of wood against wood. His father looked like he'd swallowed glass. I stood heart-pounding but steady. Victoria leaned in, whispering with a grin, "Told you he'd bury himself." As Daryl stormed out of the courtroom, Danielle's betrayal twisted the knife further. She'd already deleted every photo of him from her socials. Rumor had it she was back with an old flame. Daryl had fought so hard to keep my apartment, my life, my security. And in the end, he was walking away with nothing but debt, humiliation, and silence. But for me, the war wasn't quite over. I still had to reclaim my space. And I wondered what state would I find my apartment in when I walked through that door again. 1 week after court, it was finally over. The eviction, the drama, the lies, all of it collapsed like a house of cards. Daryl had 3 days to clear out. But he didn't pack. He didn't plan. He just sat there sulking until Denise arrived with the maintenance crew. "Sir," she said firmly, clipboard in hand, "you need to leave now." Daryl crossed his arms, sinking deeper into the couch. "I'm not going anywhere without my stuff." Denise didn't blink. "Then start packing. Anything left behind will be boxed and stored for 30 days per state law." The look on his face was priceless, caught between outrage and helplessness. He muttered something under his breath, but when Denise motioned for the crew to start, he panicked. He called his dad. He called Chloe. He even called Danielle, though rumor had it she was already with someone new. By the afternoon, his father finally showed up with a U-Haul, his expression aged and defeated. He wouldn't meet my eyes as Daryl stomped around the apartment, shoving clothes into bags, yelling about how I'd ruined his life. But I wasn't alone this time. Victoria stood beside me, clipboard of her own documenting every detail. "That's mine," I said evenly, pointing to my blender when Daryl tried to tuck it into a box. He scowled. "Seriously, you're nickel and diming me." "That's my coffee maker," I added as he tried to sneak that away too. Each time he raged louder. Each time I stood my ground. Chloe showed up halfway through, her voice sharp and dramatic. "Marissa, you're abusive. How can you treat him like this after 4 years?" I ignored her. Abusers don't hand over proof. They don't walk away calmly and hire lawyers. They don't give 30 days of notice. By the end of the day, Daryl was gone. The apartment was mine again. But it wasn't the same. Coffee stains splattered the carpet in the bedroom like someone had poured it out of spite. The hardwood floors were scratched, furniture dragged without care. The bathroom mirror was cracked down the middle. Rotten food stank from the fridge. He hadn't just left, he'd tried to leave scars. But scars can be cleaned, repaired, healed. I spent the next week scrubbing, painting, fixing. Every stroke of a brush, every trash bag hauled to the curb felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. And when it was finally done, when the apartment smelled like lemon cleaner instead of decay, when the walls were patched and the carpet shampooed, I sat on the couch with a cup of coffee and breathed for the first time in months. Peace. Daryl lost everything. His girlfriend, his reputation, his case in court. Word spread fast, and soon even his friends stopped defending him. Chloe still commented on his posts, but her loyalty rang hollow. As for Danielle, she'd already moved on, leaving Daryl behind like a forgotten season. And me, I didn't just get my apartment back, I got myself back. I thought about those words he'd thrown at me that night. When I asked him where he'd been, "I don't have to tell you everything I do." And maybe he was right. He didn't owe me honesty, but I didn't owe him my home, my money, or my love. He thought I'd never leave, that I'd stay predictable, a safety net, while he tested out someone new. But he underestimated me. Now sitting in the home I rebuilt, sipping my coffee in silence, I finally smiled. "Daryl," I whispered into the quiet, "you were right about one thing. You don't have to tell me everything you do, and I don't have to tolerate any of it." I raised my mug like a toast to freedom. to peace, to never settling for lies again. And somewhere out there, I imagined Daryl back in his childhood bedroom, scrolling through his phone, wondering how it had all slipped away.